And now for our feature presentation.
He'll be fine on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series.
Watson, touchdown! Hunter Renfro.
He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Citadel baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers.
Get the ball to Bennett. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings and a good Friday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and very proudly presented by Motley Rice. Causes not just cases, MotleyRice.com. Head to JB and GoldwaterShow.com for more about us, and you can chime in on the Share Healthcare chat lines as well via Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you are. Pop us a note, and Darren will make sure he pops it into our program over the next couple of hours. We do have Derek Scott coming up at 12:30 today, and so we're certainly looking forward to speaking with him because South Carolina's got Tennessee tomorrow at home, and it's a very important basketball game if the Gamecocks want to continue to give themselves a chance to be discussed as the season rolls along for the postseason. So we're going to talk to him about that one coming off of a pretty bad performance over in Starkville, Mississippi. And JC Shurburtt is going to jump back in today at the top of the 1 o'clock hour. He's going to double dip with us because if you haven't noticed, there have been some pretty crazy things going on in the wide world of coaching. The Gamecocks are trying to get it figured out to replace both Connor Shaw and Eric Kimry up in Columbia, and Auburn might be looking to replace pretty much everybody if Bryan Harsin is shown the door, which if it happens, it would more than likely happen today or tomorrow. At least that's how reports stand. He has spoken with, in my opinion, one of the most respectable college football reporters ever, Chris Lowe. And so he's got a couple of interesting comments in there that we're going to get to. But JC has incredible contacts all over the country, and he certainly does in the SEC, and he's got some pretty darn good ones inside of the Auburn community. So we're going to get him back in to talk about that. Another former Carolina coach has been added to the Alabama staff. It's just incredible what's happening there. We've got the Olympics set to go. They actually opened this morning, technically, the opening ceremonies. If you missed them, I think they might re-show them tonight in prime time. But the U.S. looking to go win another medal count if they can get to it. So we'll take a peek at some of that. And it's a great weekend for college hoops as well. I know Darren is going to be all fired up to lay a bunch of bets down. You probably noticed that we don't have Rafael Esparza today with mybookie.ag. He had a kind of a mandatory meeting come up at noon. I think it's Super Bowl related.
Yeah, very much so. There's
okay.
I don't know how many prop bets are out there currently, but Rafael is in charge of putting together a lot of them. So there's a prop bet meeting that's going on, which if you know anything about betting in the Super Bowl, it's a pretty big day for Vegas and sports betting. So that's going to be top of his mind right now.
Yeah. That's a busy, very money-making time for Rafael if you can get it kind of all put together. So, but there's a lot to talk about today. And as we always do on Fridays, we'll lead off with our 2-minute drill. I meant the Olympics are underway. Make sure that you tune in to your local listings, NBC, USA. They've all got a bunch of different stuff. I know I have Dish Network. There's an Olympic channel that'll direct you specifically to what's going on. So follow along. The medal count is not yet happening because nobody's won a medal, but somebody will starting tonight. So happy 2022 Winter Olympics from Beijing. In-state hoops coming up this weekend. As you know, South Carolina will play host to Tennessee tomorrow at 1 o'clock on CBS, but Derek and Casey will have it beginning at 12:30 on the Gamecock IMG Sports Network. Coastal Carolina's at Texas State tomorrow as well. Their game last night against UT Arlington was canceled due to some COVID issues. College of Charleston won last night, and they've got Elon tomorrow in Elon, North Carolina. The Cougs are 12-9 overall, 4-5 in the league. The Citadel will take on Samford at home. Dogs coming off a loss against Furman, just 9-12, 3-7 in the SoCon. Charleston Southern, they'll face Longwood tomorrow at the Buccaneer Fieldhouse, coming off of a loss this week to Radford. We know, and Clemson beat Florida State this week, 75-69. They are 12-9, 4-6 in the league. They've got Georgia Tech in Atlanta tomorrow at 2 o'clock from McCamish Pavilion. Last night, Lady Gamecocks more than took care of Alabama, 83-51. 21-1 on the year, 9-1 in the Southeastern Conference. Tomorrow night at 6 o'clock on ESPN, you might want to check it out. Duke is at North Carolina. It'll be the final time in Chapel Hill for Coach K as he kind of winds his coaching career down of the Blue Devils. We'll see what type of send-off North Carolina is willing to give him. That includes the team and the fans. And the Senior Bowl is at 2:30 tomorrow on the NFL Network from beautiful Mobile, Alabama. So hopefully you'll check that out. And that is your 2-minute drill, as we always do on Fridays. By my numbers, Darren, I believe there's only 2 players in the Senior Bowl from our state. Isaiah Likely, the tight end out of Coastal, and then J.J. Enoch-Bari from South Carolina. So that's it.
I haven't looked, to be honest, at the Senior Bowl rosters. I paid a little bit more attention years ago when Patrick Wu was down there as one of the top guys in charge. Kind of, I don't know, he wasn't the top guy, but he was 2 or 3 down. Now he's in the Titans organization. I've known him, met him through connections at Penn State. He's kind of a quietly rising star in the player personnel business. But I've followed the quarterback story because the Commanders of DC might be in the market for a quarterback. I don't know. I know for a fact there isn't one that jumps off the page. I know Willis has had a decent practice down there. How does he compare with Kenny Pickett? I don't know. Sam Howell. It's not a quarterback ripe draft, but that maybe because they're quarterbacks, that seems to be dominating the headlines. I do want to get one thing in because last night I had a random high school basketball game on a Thursday, so I was up a little later than normal, and I did catch the Arizona UCLA game following Arizona's 10-point victory, in which they were a 7-point favorite. I flipped over to Fox Sports 1, and I'm watching Colorado and Oregon, and they're flashing this alert that Arizona upset UCLA, and it drove me nuts. They did not only did they not upset them, they were favored by a touchdown. They won by 10, and you're getting upset alerts. It's way too late in the game for this. It's one of the first things I ever learned in broadcasting before I bet myself was you need to know the line. Whether you bring it up in the game or not, you need to know, because you can't say it's an upset if it's not an upset. It drove me nuts, and it bothered me all night.
I totally understand and agree with what you're saying. They were obviously putting that on there because of the rankings, right?
They were, but the ranking, I mean,
the rankings don't matter as far as I get it.
Yeah, but think about college football, right? I mean, the rankings, even the college football playoff rankings, just because they're ranked higher doesn't mean they're favorite. Doesn't mean they're the better team in the eyes of most people. So, great. That's the ranking. But, I mean, Arizona laid an egg when they played at UCLA, and then they came back. They were supposed to dominate the game, and they did. UCLA made one late push to kind of get within 5, 6, maybe even got as close as 4, and then Arizona put the thing away. I mean, it drove me nuts. By the way, go Pokes.
Go Pokes. Yeah, they beat Boise, so they're the best team in the Mountain West.
Right? Yeah, right now. Wyoming's beaten Colorado State and Boise, and are now the number 1 team in the Mountain West, and that league could get 3 or 4 teams into the tournament.
Good, absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt. I would say if you're talking about, or if you're looking for an upset type team or somebody to make some noise in the dance, pull from the Mountain West. Certainly. I mean, an off the radar type team. You know what I mean? Somebody that specific to our area is probably not a program that people paid much attention to. Colorado State, Boise, Wyoming. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. Yes, Adam, Zaquandre White, by the way, is in the Senior Bowl. I had forgotten that I started this yesterday and didn't finish it. So, yeah, he's on the American team. So is Clemson's Mario Goodrich. And that's by the way, the national and the American teams in the Senior Bowl, I hope this isn't an indicator of the future of all these young men, but the American team is named after the Detroit Lions, and the national team is named after the New York Jets. So best of luck to all those players in their futures. Hopefully it's not where they end up. But a neat little nugget there, too, for the American Bowl side is that Deuce Staley is coaching in the Senior Bowl because he's with the Lions. So that's pretty neat. So there are some great state ties to this game tomorrow, and if you can check it out at 2:30, there you go. Good day of hoops and stuff like that. All right, Darren, let's slide into this. Let's slide into this Bryan Harsin situation. So, for those that have slept the last 24 hours and haven't paid attention to what's actually going on out there, it's I guess time in short time will tell what the future of Bryan Harsin is at Auburn, but it looks like behind the scenes, the Tigers are really doing some work to try to get him out of that chair and moving on. And based on, some reporting out there, it looks like it's a lot of the same people that just didn't really want him anyways, Darren, to come to the Plains. There was a player today that tweeted out that, hey, look, I was one of 20 guys that left the program, or maybe Instagram, one way or another with social media, postseason. And although he's got a winner's attitude and he knows how to win and all those type of things, I'm paraphrasing, from a personal standpoint, he's a terrible person, basically, is what they were saying. So there's also rumor. I don't know that anybody's confirmed this. So if you see it, you have fun with it if you want to. But I would pump the brakes on taking it as gospel, like much of it's on social media these days, that he was potentially having an affair with a staffer that I guess was a former cheerleader at Boise State that came with him as the executive assistant to the head coach. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't think anybody's been able to confirm that. But Bryan Harsin did speak with Chris Lowe, and Chris Lowe and Pete Thamel together at ESPN put an article out just a little while ago What I find really interesting before I read some of the comments here, and again, JC is going to come up at the top of the 1 o'clock hour, so we'll rehash some of this, Darren, with him just to get his thoughts on it. JC has elite contacts inside of the Auburn athletics community. He's on vacation right now. Bryan Harsin is. He's on vacation. And so a lot of this is kind of going on, not a lot, all of it is going on without his presence actually on campus at Auburn. But he did say, this interview took place last night, he did say to Chris Lowe that I am the Auburn coach, and that's how I'm operating every day. I want this thing to work, and I've told our players and told everybody else there's no plan B, and I'm not planning on going anywhere. This was and is the job. That's why I left the one I was in to come here and make this place a championship program and leave it better than I found it. And, he went on to say a few other things, but what really caught my eye was this quote. Certainly, I'm the right man for the job. There's no doubt about it. No one is going to have a better plan than I do, but we've got to change some things. This place is not going to be a championship program until we change some things. You've got to let the head coach be the head coach and support him. And that is what Bryan Harsin had to say about the school that he works for. And you just a moment ago put up the Bryan Harsin post-up careers resume, and it is an outstanding resume overall in his coaching tenure, 82-31, and he's been a head coach at Arkansas State, Boise State, Auburn, has spent time at Texas. This guy's been around and he understands football. There it is again. If you're listening to our program, you can't see that, but it's just basically a resume of his timeline as a college coach. But Darren, a couple of things to kind of poke holes in those comments. Number one is that Auburn is a championship program. I mean, they've won multiple national championships. They've played in plenty. They've won lots of SEC titles. I mean, this program has certainly been very, very successful. That is why they're one of the quote-unquote Big Six in the league. But Auburn has long had a dark side that surfaces almost when it feels like it, right? And it's big boosters. It's powerful people, not necessarily in assigned roles or paid roles within the athletics department. And whenever they feel like they want to say something or they want to do something, they do it. And, if you're Bryan Harsin, I would imagine before you applied for this job, or even if you didn't apply for it, before they knocked on your door to gauge your interest, that you would have done your homework and your research. That's not hard to figure out. That at Auburn, there's a lot of pull there from a lot of different people. And again, I'm going to let JC kind of get more into it at the top of the 1 o'clock hour. But, 10 of 27 coaches in the history of the school have been there for 1 year. That's a third of the coaches they've ever had. 1 year. That's it. Out the door. You win a national championship a couple years later, you're fired. So Darren, it's a quick trigger, short fuse type program. They do have a bunch of money, and that money isn't necessarily always just sitting there to well, maybe it will be one day, but to pay NIL dollars and things like that. That's hideaway money. That's don't call me until you need it, or if I call you, you better pick up the phone. You know what I mean? That's what that type of money is. So I don't know what's going to happen with this. It seems like it's at a very interesting point here where, if you're Bryan Harsin, what type of comfort do you have moving forward as the head coach if there is this large contingent of powerful people who want you out of there? And then if you're Auburn, what does your future look like when this is going to be held against you in recruiting? You've already lost 20 players. I mean, I know they just signed a nice class. If you fire them, who are you hiring? I'm not saying that like there's nobody to hire. There are people to hire, but who will it be? What will that look like? It seems to me like it's a mess.
It's a dumpster fire. I think there's validity to what he says. Every time we talk with folks tied in with Auburn, I'll put JC is on that list. He's very much tied in. That's why we've got him coming back on here today. That topic can circle back up. The fact that the head coach doesn't always have the power to be the head coach. There were multiple rumors, reports, if you want to call it that coordinators were either in place or being sought after before Harsin even had the job. And that's not the first time that this has happened. That JC has discussed that now a couple of times on this show. So is there validity to what Harsin is saying? Yeah, I think so. I absolutely think that there's some pressure there and there's some feeling, maybe there's a lot of truth behind it, that people in charge don't necessarily have the power. And I'm talking head coach, because the higher ups and boosters can have a little bit more power. Having said that, there's so much back and forth right now that it almost feels like the middle ground won't be found, if there is a middle ground. And I forget the name of the player who posted on social media about players getting treated like dogs and how Harsin's a good coach, but he's not a good person. I'm paraphrasing what he said, but that's what he said. I don't put a whole lot of stock in that. I mean, we just showed his resume. I'm going to pop it up here again. He's a long tenured, successful guy. He spent, 10 years at Boise as an assistant, then back at Boise again for 6 or 7 more years. Then he was at Auburn. Look, if he had problems as a person, as a guy relating to players, that would have come out already. I mean, that he wouldn't have been a successful head coach at Boise if that was actually the case. He might not be a fit. It might be a very different culture at Auburn than it is in the Midwest. But I have trouble wrapping my arms around a universal blanket statement that this guy's just not a good person and he treats all his players terribly. But there's so much back and forth, problems on Harsin's side here and problems. JC's talked about the Derek Mason thing when Mason was sick with COVID, and then Harsin issues some strange statement and Mason comes back out again and encourages vaccines. I mean, that just shows friction between the two of them. I'm not walking down the vaccine road here, but it just shows friction there. This is not a happy marriage. So whether it ends now or ends soon, neither one is going to surprise me, because eventually, unless they start winning and winning big, this is going to end.
I go back to totally agree with a lot of what you're saying too, and I go back to what we just talked about a minute ago, man. And who is really in charge here?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, like, who is really in charge at Auburn? Because they just paid almost $22 million. Might still be paying some of it. Doesn't matter. The buyout was $22 million to move Gus Malzahn off the Plains. Okay. And if you don't have cause, if they decide to depart from their relationship or break this thing up with Bryan Harsin, you're talking about 70% of what he's owed. If it's without cause, it's $18 million. I mean, I'm not great math, but that's almost $40 million you would be paying in bye-bye fees to 2 head coaches with literally within a calendar year. I'm talking 1 year, 2 guys, $40 million to not be the coach. They have an athletics director, Alan Green, who, I don't know much about Alan Green, Darren. He's seemingly has done a nice job at Auburn. Bruce Pearl's kind of working out. I do think that if there wasn't a bunch of nonsense and a bunch of Southern politics in this, which there always is, that actually Bryan Harsin in the long run would probably be okay. At Auburn, he's a good coach. I mean, he knows how to build a program. I mean, it might not be the way that they're used to at Auburn, might not be the way we're used to in the South. But at the end of the day, I actually think that there'd be a lot of kinks to get through. I'm just saying if there wasn't any outside noise. I mean, he wasn't, by a resume, he wasn't a bad hire. I mean, this guy was on a lot of short lists to take over programs. So all that being said, Alan Green, what's interesting about him is he's on the final year of a 5-year contract to be the AD. Now, does that not strike you as odd? Do you know any other ADs that are on the final year of a contract with no extension? Nothing. I mean, when does anybody in college athletics, Darren, literally ever get to, well, this is the final year in your contract? Like, that never happens. They always renew somewhere.
It's rare because then you're
Yeah.
sitting duck and then it's a problem. I mean, and in his final year, he just shelled out boosters, whoever. I don't even remember the number for Bruce Pearl for a lifetime contract to keep him there when rumors started to build behind Pearl to Louisville momentum. So he's already shelled out money there. He just got rid of a coach. If he gets rid of another one, if he walks out the door, he's walking out with a trail of money that's following him out the door, but it's not following it into his pocket. It's going elsewhere.
Right. No. Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to come of this situation, but I do know this. If you're Auburn, you are slipping quickly behind the 8 ball in the West. I mean, honestly, think about it for a second. And I get it. It's Auburn. They always seemingly are going to have players. They're always going to be able to sign players. But I mean, Bama's Bama. And look at what A&M is building. Brian Kelly just got to LSU. It's really hard to envision them not winning like LSU's used to. Lane Kiffin is still at Ole Miss, right? Arkansas is on the up and up. How long does that stay around for? I don't know. Mike Leach is not going to be like, you're never going to be a cakewalk type program when you have Mike Leach as your head coach. You're always have a chance just because it's different. So the West is incredible, and you've got Oklahoma and Texas coming in. We'll see what the new SEC looks like, but Auburn has more problems than every one of those schools. LSU looks like they've largely solved a lot of them. Might take some time to kind of rebuild it, but they obviously have a plan in place, and everybody else seems stable. Not Auburn. So if they fire a coach in February, boy, you better be ready to go out and hire somebody that's really going to come in and be able to make noise. Who would that be? I don't know. But there's somebody out there, that's for sure.
It doesn't happen often when you get through National Signing Day here in February, and then that's the point where, we're just a couple of weeks away from spring practice. It's not often when a coach gets cut right then you got to figure things out. That almost, to me, screams interim for a year. And then what does that do to your program if that's the route you go? Because if that's the route you go, you're not pulling a head coach from somewhere right now. I wouldn't think. Money talks. It's possible. But if you go this route, the question is, if you're Auburn, which is, I think the valid question is which is worse, not which is better. If you're Auburn right now, the situation is what it is. Which is worse? To roll the dice on this year, keeping Harsin and whoever you're going to bring in as another offensive coordinator, or is it worse to get rid of him now? Because it's hard to frame it as which is better right now, because neither one feels palatable. If I'm an Auburn fan, neither one feels palatable from the outside. Neither one looks great.
Last year before he got hired, and I know we got to get to a break, Derek Scott is coming up next, but before he got hired, there was a heavy push from some heavy hitters, and they were fended off by Alan Green, the athletics director at Auburn. Needless to say, by the way, if this Bryan Harsin thing doesn't work out, Alan Green's probably gone with it. More than likely, that's why his contract hadn't been renewed, because people wanted Kevin Steele. Yeah, Kevin Steele over Bryan Harsin, and they found a way to get Bryan Harsin in the door instead of Kevin Steele, who was the interim kind of coach. But he's now the DC at Miami. So I'm just going to kind of toss this out to you, and we'll circle back with it with JC at the top of the 1 o'clock hour. You and I don't generally just dangle carrots out there for our audience to get upset about. But if you're planning on hiring Kevin Steele, if you got rid of him, we're going to go get Kevin Steele. He would come back here in a hurry. Why not hire Will Muschamp?
So I'm going to circle back with that comment to Post Up Careers, because if anyone's looking for a resume, and you'll see where I'm going with this, Franklin Buchanan is where you want to go if you want to further your career, LinkedIn optimization, resume, whatever you need to further your career, change your career. Maybe Bryan Harsin might have to reach out to him soon. When I texted Franklin this morning, the graphic that I was building, he said, "How about Will Muschamp to Auburn?" I said, I haven't really seen a list, but would that shock me? No. It wouldn't. It would shock me less, or I don't think shock would even be a word. Kevin Steele going back would surprise me unless there's an AD change, because he was hired basically as the next guy in waiting, essentially, and then that didn't happen. So then he's out. Now is he coming back under the same guy? As a man, that'd be hard for me to do.
I think you got to score points if you're at Auburn, and I'll be honest with you, if something really happens, I got a feeling that this is going to be the moment where we hear a little bit more about Hugh Freeze at Liberty. Just a hunch. Just a hunch.
Sense.
So
Makes sense.
keep an eye on it. 12:28 on hey, first of all, before we go to break, shout out to my man Craig, our man Craig, Darren, sorry. He's at Joey's Pancake House up in Maggie Valley, which is like a second home to me. And Joey's Pancake House is the best breakfast ever. They literally have the quick story on that. They sold and changed owners a couple of years ago for the first time in like 50 years. And when that happened, they got to closing, and the new owner said, well, now wait a second. Where are the recipes for the pancakes? And they said, oh, no. That's about another $500,000. They said, well, we'll gladly pay it because we can't change the pancake recipe. And so that's what happened. So Joey's Pancakes, if you're ever in the Maggie Valley area, free advertising for them. Place is unbelievable. It's packed every morning starting like 6 o'clock. But Craig, eat up for all of us up there in beautiful Maggie Valley, North Carolina. All right, we're going to head to the capital city of South Carolina. When we return, the voice of Gamecock Hoops, Derek Scott, is on deck right here on the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. You know what happens when you sell record numbers of new vehicles? That's right, we take in record numbers of local trades. Despite what the news is saying, quality pre-owned vehicles really aren't that hard to find. You just need to know where to look. Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate and on the web at stokesvw.com. We've got over 1,200 pre-owned cars, trucks, SUVs, and all at a fraction of the price when new. Every vehicle has been inspected and reconditioned, many with the balance of factory warranty. Best of all, at Stokes Volkswagen, you don't need perfect credit to get approved for a quality pre-owned vehicle. And we'll take any trade in any condition, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Don't forget, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy a car from us. You're going to love our pre-owned selection, I guarantee it. So come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or stokesvw.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Negative trade equity financed a new loan subject to lender approval.
People don't like to get stuck in traffic, stuck in the mud, stuck at work. And two others you probably don't think much about: stuck with a big medical bill or stuck with a healthcare program that doesn't fit who you are. Experience true medical freedom with Share Healthcare. More affordable, more options, user-friendly, and biblically sound. You can join right now. Explore a new way to show you care with Share Healthcare. Join us today at sharehealthcare.com. sharehealthcare.com.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
You hear me talk about Dog and Duck all the time, and there's no other place I'm going to watch my college and NFL than the Dog and Duck. They have 3 locations: Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road. They have specials all football season long, like $12 pitchers of their own D2 brew, $5 pints of Sierra Nevada, weekly pick'em sheets with prizes, and the best wings in town, bar none. For all your football, college, and NFL, the Dog and Duck, Clements Ferry Road, Bell Hall, and Park West.
Motley Rice LLC is a law firm with international reach, but it hasn't lost its Carolina roots. The Motley Rice team fights every day for people harmed by products including asbestos and talc exposure, medical drugs and devices, and also catastrophic injuries and auto recalls, including dangerous Takata airbags. Motley Rice is headquartered in Mount Pleasant at 28 Bridgeside Boulevard. Visit motleyrice.com. Thank you, Motley Rice, for supporting the JB and Goldwater Show and the Big Gamecock Preview Show.
Hey, South Carolina, what's going on? This is Patrick Davis, and you are listening to my friends JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Pop a top again.
Freak. T-G-I-F.
Finally, Friday, I'm free again. I got my motor running for a wild weekend.
Freak out, yo.
Friday, gotta get down on Friday.
It is Friday. One day closer to Saturday, which is when Derek Scott works this week as the voice of Gamecock basketball. Carolina's looking for another quad one win tomorrow, and Derek's going to tell us how they get it. What's up, man?
I'm hearing myself, so I've got an issue here. Trying to figure out how to fix that. Little feedback issues going on. I've not run into this before, but I think I know why it is. So I may have to. There we go. Is that better?
You're the tech guy. You know it all.
Now I can't hear you guys at all.
we hear you.
Optimal.
How about now?
Can you hear me here, fellas?
We do hear you if you can hear us.
How's it now?
I can hear you fine. Yeah.
Okay. We'll make
good?
it work then.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, we're good. What's up?
You know, just getting ready for a busy weekend. Basketball at the CLA tomorrow at 1 p.m. A national CBS TV audience tuning in. Back-to-back ranked teams coming into the CLA. And I was down there earlier today. Didn't even realize there's a concert going on tonight. So couldn't even get some things done that I wanted to in the building. But that's the way it works sometimes.
Who's the concert?
No idea. Nobody that I recognize.
I mean, I figure if it was somebody I knew, I would have heard about it. But I didn't.
Exactly.
All right. Well, didn't go that well in Starkville. Let's start there. What happened?
I mean, you just ran into a Bulldogs team that was locked in. I mean, Ben Howland said afterwards, that first half is the best half of basketball his team's played all season. So sometimes you're just on the wrong end of one of those. And I said, going in, if you get one of two on this road trip, then that's a good road trip. I mean, I know fans never want to hear that. They want to win every game. Mm-hmm. But if you're playing a couple of conference games back to back on the road, if you can get a split, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's just not. It goes back to what Darren was saying earlier about the upset in Tucson last night. No, man, you're not supposed to win those games on the road. When you do, it's great, but it's not stunning that UCLA goes and loses to Arizona by double figures. It wasn't stunning that the Gamecocks lost at Mississippi State. And certainly having gotten the win at Texas A&M, it was a little easier to swallow. Now you get another opportunity with these back-to-back quad ones at home against nationally ranked teams for South Carolina.
Derek, we kind of going into the Vanderbilt, Georgia stretch, at least on our program, kind of started splitting the season up as we looked at the schedule and towards the end of the year and said, okay, you can't lose these two games. And then you got this quad one stretch here. And if you can get out of there at 2-2, maybe, then you got a couple of opportunities on the road, albeit in the SEC. The road's tough, but
sure.
Hopefully you're better than Ole Miss and Georgia, and you can kind of maybe take care of business there. And then you got a bunch more quad one opportunities. And if you find a way to win 2 or 3 of those games, you've given yourselves a chance. And really, so far, to your point, that they're right on track to be in contention at the end of the year. I know a lot of people look at that loss and want it to mean 7 losses and not just 1, but realistically, it actually was only 1 loss. I don't know if people know that. But coming off of the A&M win, I mean, you were there. You called the game. I don't know that there's being enough credit given to A&M and what type of program they have. I know they're in the middle of a little bit of a skid here, Derek, but you saw them up close and personal. How good of a win was that? It was a quad one win, but how good in your mind was it?
Well, I mean, what type of team did they? To me, any road win to me is important. None of them are take for granted. I don't care who you are. You're not going to take it for granted in Athens, Georgia next week, in spite of the long winning streak you've got against them. You just can't. It's teams who are at home; they're going to be better. If you are Auburn sitting at number 1 in the country, maybe you do take them for granted. Most of us are not in those shoes, though. So no, A&M is a team that is still, I think, no one expected them to be as competitive as they are this year. So they don't have a true go-to guy. They've got some good pieces, but certainly that was a gettable game. And South Carolina played in the second half really, really well. I thought it was interesting. Frank told me after the game that he knew what he needed to change in the offensive scheme compared to what they went in with the scouting report and then what they saw from A&M. And he goes, I just didn't want to try it and make those drastic changes during a timeout. He was patient. He just waited out the first half, and they grinded out, stayed in it, and then got to halftime. And then you've got more time. Guys can really focus on what you're telling them. Made significant adjustments, and the Gamecocks were really good in the second half in that contest. And they made, I think, some pretty good adjustments at Mississippi State, too. The problem was first half Mississippi State was so much better than first half A&M that you got yourself into a big, big hole. And Garrison Brooks wasn't going to give you a chance to limp through the first half when you weren't, attacking the way you needed to it. And so, yeah, I'll take that win at A&M any day of the week. That's a good, solid club. I think State's a better team. And then sometimes, honestly, it's about where you are and what your habits are in those places. South Carolina has had success over the years at Reed Arena in College Station. South Carolina has never had much success in Starkville at the Hump. 4 wins now in 19 tries. So that's not a Frank Martin problem. That's not a 2021-22 Gamecock problem. That's a long-term struggle to succeed in that building.
I said after the Mississippi State game that I thought the difference in the 2 games there on the road trip, we talked about the defense, the efficiency of A&M's defense, Mississippi State's defense. I'm going to lump Tennessee in here for the question. I thought the difference, though, was that Mississippi State came out more aggressive than A&M did and sped up the offense. So where I'm going with this is Tennessee's another one of those excellent defensive metric teams in the SEC. Who do they compare more to, Mississippi State or Texas A&M?
I don't know. I'd put them. I think they compare more to South Carolina in the way they play. I mean, that's why when these two teams get together, when it's 2 teams on pretty even ground, it's typically a rock fight. It's not pretty. That's why I chuckled when I saw CBS is doing this game. This is not the style of game that probably the national guys want on CBS in terms of these 2 teams are just going to brawl with each other. It's not going to be fluid. It's not going to be ballet on hard court by any stretch. That's not how it's ever been when Rick Barnes and Frank Martin get together. But those folks that know that matchup know that, and you just got to prepare for it. The thing I'll say about Tennessee as it jumps out to me is they got so many guys that seem to create turnovers. They get a lot of steals. And in that regard, maybe a little more similar to Mississippi State, but even take it further. I mean, when you look at the numbers that Kennedy Chandler and Vescovy and Josiah James and Zakai Ziegler have, my gosh, that's 4 different guys who, when you look at Ken Palm's steal rate, I mean, they all are up there above, I want to say 3.5, and that's unheard of. I mean, 3.5, 3.5 or above on a steal percentage is, top 100 in the country sort of stuff. And James and Vescovy are both, in that 3.5 to 3.7 range. And then Chandler and Ziegler are 4.4, 4.5. That's top 30 guys in the country right there. And so that's a lot of quick hands and troublesome hands to deal with. South Carolina's turnover numbers have been better lately in these last 4 games. Be interested to see if they can keep them down against this Tennessee defense. That's going to be a challenge.
What's important there? I mean, you mentioned all the steal numbers and how Tennessee gets in the lanes. Carolina's done a lot of that over the years, obviously under Frank. So what's important for South Carolina to combat that?
Well, I mean, you've got to be good with full court pressure, and that's really sometimes just a matter of keeping your cool, keeping your composure against that. Because what Tennessee does is I feel like their steal percentage is like third in the nation. So they are going to go, they're going to try and get hands on basketball. So you got to be really strong, and sometimes that comes down to just being, deliberate in what you do and not ever assuming that you're in the clear. You got to really constantly be aware that someone's going to try and reach in and create a deflection. It's challenged, and there's no question. But at the same time, Tennessee's one of those teams that hasn't been nearly as consistent on the road as at home. I mean, they are 2-4 in away game settings, 1-2 in neutral court settings. So you get them out of Thompson Bowling, and you can find some holes in there. And more than anything, you just have to remember that they are a absolute Dow Jones kind of offensive team. And Frank pointed out, he said, just look at their last two contests, and he's right. They scored 90 against Texas A&M earlier this week. The game before that, they scored 51 against Texas. I mean, Longhorns and Aggies aren't that big of a difference for a 40-point swing. But, the A&M game was at home. The Texas game was in Austin. So I think for South Carolina, you just got to come back at them with that same level of defensive intensity. And that's where I get into that original point about it being a rock fight. There might not be a whole lot of made field goals to speak of in this one. If we're setting up going to the under 4 timeout in the first half and it's 26-24, don't be surprised. That's just the reality we might run into in this.
Well, so the Vols didn't come last year to the CLA. That game was canned because of COVID, if I remember correctly. But they did 2 years ago, and that was a loss for them. South Carolina beat them 63-61 in February of 2020, I believe. So you just for the record, kind of a stat to throw out there. But Derek, with all that being said, I might be wrong, but I thought Devin, Jacoby, Jermaine. Am I missing somebody? Stevenson? Did they play four point guards last game? I know they played 3.
Really, just 3. I don't think Eric's River really on the point, but yeah, you're going to see. Jermaine and Devin and Jacoby are certainly all included in that group.
What is it's February. I mean, they're halfway through the league schedule. I know in a perfect world or a more perfect world, Frank would like to have just a point guard, somebody that he can spell here and there for a couple of minutes, but overall the guy's going to play 35 minutes a game. But he doesn't have that. How are they any closer to getting there than they were a couple of weeks ago?
Well, I think he's gotten his trust in Jermaine back, and I think that makes Jermaine the primary guy there. I was surprised that Devin stayed in the starting lineup Tuesday because I thought Jermaine, out based on the performance at A&M and the games prior to that, had kind of gotten back to that. But I also think Frank just felt like, I'm not going to mess with a good thing. If we're on a 3-game winning streak, that's not the time to change your starting lineup. Mm-hmm. So he left Devin out there. Devin's not a natural point guard. And, I mean, he struggled from the jump at Starkville. And so, again, I'll say I would expect Jermaine to be back in the starting lineup. But I'm basing that, again, no different than the previous game. Just my hunch. I haven't asked Frank that. I just would expect starters' minutes would certainly go to Jermaine, and that, in my mind, also might include getting the start. That's just what I suspect. But we will wait and see how it comes together. I'll also say this. What I found out last night in Carolina calls was Gamecocks have a little bit of injury problems now. Josh Gray, if you were watching that game in Starkville, when he went up for that dunk and got his legs taken out from under him, he landed really hard. I was initially worried about lower back, but then as he got up, if you remember, he was wincing in pain and holding that wrist as he shot the free throws. And then he came out of the locker room at halftime with an ice bag taped around his wrist, and he never returned. And I asked about it last night, and Frank said it is a broken wrist. And much like Herb Jones last year with Alabama, he's going to try and play in a soft cast.
Okay. Now,
that obviously limits your ability with that left hand to grip the basketball. So how do you play ball screen defense? How do you rebound? It's not your primary shooting hand, it's your offhand, but it's going to be a problem. And so we'll see how Josh deals with that. Initially in a game as physical as the Tennessee game is expected to be, that'll be, to me, a real challenge. But Coach Martin certainly has gotten the okay from the trainers that it's not a shut him down moment necessarily. Let's see what he can do playing in a soft cast. And so we'll all be curious to see that tomorrow. But in my mind, that puts a little more pressure on Wildens Levesque, who's needed to step up his play here in conference play anyway. Wildens has got to stay out of foul trouble. He cannot get those 2 quick ones in the first 6 minutes of the game. It's even more of a priority now because of Josh for the first game out trying to figure out how to deal with that soft cast, and then also Taquan Woodley, who missed the last 2 games as he left the team for the birth of his baby. He has not gotten back, to campus until today. So he'll suit up tomorrow, but I don't know how well versed he'll be as a freshman missing that much time in the game plan. So as far as the bigs are concerned, there could be some real challenges out there for South Carolina, and more, of the load goes on Wildens. And that also means Keyshawn has got to really play physically in that power forward position. I had somebody ask me last night on social media, is Frank going to keep Keyshawn at the 4? It seems like he's a better fit at the 3. Well, that was before we found out the information on Josh. Now I don't think there's any question. I didn't ask the question of Frank, because once he mentioned Josh, in my mind, you don't have a choice now. He's got to play big. He's not. I mean, let's face it. Keyshawn's listed at 6'6". I'm not sure he's even that tall. He's a thin guy. He's less than 190 pounds. He's got to really use his athleticism to try and make some mismatches for the opposition's power forward. And that's going to be important, because the lineup Tennessee's been running out there lately, they've had Olivier Kamwa at the 4, and he's 6'8" and 223. He's a load. And then they're putting the 7-footer Plavcic in there at center ahead of John Fulkerson, who's been disappointing lately. But it's going to be a real ask for those guys, and Brandon Martin's got to help out a lot as well for South Carolina.
And AJ Wilson. AJ Wilson.
Thank you. I forgot AJ, and he's probably as big, maybe bigger than any of those guys I mentioned in terms of being a better fit for that position and making strides. I don't think there's any question. He has been better consistently over this last 4-game stretch than he was at any point prior to that. So thank you. That was a complete whiff on my part with AJ.
Well, you mentioned Keyshawn, and as I was watching the game last Saturday night, which was, by the way, it's kind of great for me. 8:30 tip out west or Midwest, whatever you want to call it. My kids are sleeping, so I get to sit there and have a bourbon. I'm listening to Derek and watching the game. I don't have any interference. It was fantastic. But there's a lot of there was a lot of places, when you're sitting in your recliner that you probably wouldn't want to be. And when Keyshawn turned it over and just kind of walked back up the court, that was one place I knew real quick, don't think I want to be there. Frank Martin called a quick timeout, and Keyshawn I have no idea what was said to him. I could only imagine. But that's a no-no in a Frank Martin. He doesn't care sometimes how bad you play, but when you don't play, especially for a guy who's been around as long as he has. Yeah,
and it was interesting, though, at the end of that game, he yelled at Keyshawn and Jermaine and called them over while they were still on the court. And he had a 3-person hug going on there. And he just really, I can tell, he really wants those two to understand he appreciates them and he needs them. He needs them to really be the veterans that they are. And that's in terms of productivity. That's in terms of leadership. Those two need to still take ownership of this team. And so it was a significant moment in College Station that took place, because, that was a good road win, and Frank wanted to make sure his veterans, his most experienced players in his system, were appreciating it as much as he was.
Derek, I think, and this wasn't necessarily something that was on the docket at all, but it's worth talking about, because you know how this works. Every time South Carolina loses a basketball game, people's heads start falling off their shoulders, and it's Tanner's fault, it's Frank's fault, it's John Wooden's fault. Everybody has some blame in this. Frank McGuire even to blame. But people like you are constantly around the players, constantly around Frank, the assistant coaches, everybody in that program. You see them. You see it from the inside out. You see it as well as anybody can see it, at least in the world we live in here. What are his relationships like that you see with his players when you're at practice and on the bus and on the plane and things like that? How is Frank when he's with his guys, and how are they with him?
He's great. I mean, yes, he coaches hard. There's no denying that. There's no window dressing that. Every moment that he's on the basketball court, whether it's a game or it's a practice, he's got his game face on. He expects you to have yours on. And if you don't, you are going to be called out for it. Doesn't matter. So there's that. But when he's off the court, man, those guys know he's in their corner. There's never any question about that. And so, yeah, it's fun when we're on an extended trip like that to see, guys get an opportunity to engage and just be in part of that team environment. And yeah, you see it, you see it nonstop from him. That's, he doesn't try and make a public spectacle of it like some guys in that business, but yeah, he's very much, in some instances, I think kind of a father figure, in some just that true traditional coach, but that doesn't mean just, X's and O's. There's a lot of leadership and support that goes on for all those guys. And I don't think you'd have any problem seeing it if you were, around them as much as I, tend to be on those weeks.
I remember when Rockfelder was basically kicked off the team. I remember kind of hearing through the grapevine of somebody that spent some time around him that, yeah, he was upset. He had let himself down, but he really felt bad as he had let Frank Martin down. And I thought, wow, that's something coming from a guy that just got kicked off the team. But, that's Frank. Well, key point, I know we've talked about a lot of them, but, tomorrow, again, in my estimation, Derek, I hate saying things like must win. I don't even engage and stuff like that until, it's actually a must win or you don't get to play anymore. So tomorrow is not a must win, but I do think it is really, really valuable if they want to continue to head in the right direction here, because Kentucky's coming up next on Tuesday, and I'm not writing it off. Never do that. Kentucky's playing as well as anybody in the league, maybe anybody in the country at times. So if you could get a win tomorrow, that gives you another quad one opportunity before you get the Wildcats and then before you get Georgia and Ole Miss on the road. If you don't, now you're 2 games under 500 with the Wildcats coming up. It starts to look rather daunting. So it's important. What is important for South Carolina? What do they need to do well tomorrow amongst everything we talked about today to give themselves a chance to pull it off?
Well, I think it does. It comes back to just what we said earlier. You've got to take good care of the basketball, and you've got to really, at the offensive end, value your possessions, because they're going to be limited in a game like this. Tennessee's not going to play at South Carolina's pace, but they are going to try and steal some possessions from you with the full court pressure and their ability to A, turn people over, and B, just be so efficient in how they guard. And so that's going to be a big factor. And then at the other end, you have to find a way to do the same to them. You can't let them get easy stuff. Make them earn it from the perimeter and allow this fan base to be a factor. To, make sure your home court advantage is its utmost. And that means it's on everybody. I never like to bang the drum of, oh, we need you. And this is one where you really, Gamecock fans, if you support Gamecock athletics, get out there, man. It's going to be fun. It's a 1 p.m. Saturday game. There's nothing else going on this weekend in the sporting world. Everybody's got their own deals to deal with. But, man, oh, man, if there's one to come to, whether you're in Columbia or Charleston or Greenville, wherever, come on down tomorrow and be a part of that atmosphere, because it can make a huge difference. And we've seen it on the road ourselves, and we've seen it. Everybody sees it on TV in certain games. I mean, if you look at that Texas Tech game the other night, the atmosphere in Lubbock was insane. And now, granted, there was an extra level of motivation there, but home crowd makes a big difference, man. It can make a huge difference when they're there and they're engaged. And that's what South Carolina needs to see in a big way Saturday afternoon, just to try and put all those pieces together and find a way to knock off a top 25 team and get that quad one win, number 2 they've been looking for.
Still tickets available in the upper deck mostly. I think there's some scattered tickets in the lower bowl, but mostly in the upper deck, which if you haven't been to the CLA in a while, there's not many bad seats. Actually, every seat in there is pretty good. So to Derek's point, if you can go, we were actually trying to come up this weekend, but couldn't make it work. But I will be up for the LSU game, Derek. Going to bring my daughters to their first ever Carolina sporting event. And they've got everything down They've got it down, man. They know when the alma mater comes on, they don't even wait to the end. They just start toasting from the first word. They've got everything. They can spell out Carolina. They've got it all, the claps and the whole night. So they're going to be fired up. And so hopefully maybe we can spend some time with you for a quick second here or there before or after the game. I'm going to try to get them down close to the band so they can kind of see it all and
absolutely
stuff like that. So
that will most certainly work. I'll be around. Me and Casey both. Casey, I'm sure we'll have a magic coin for both of them. So make sure you get them down there.
And I'll text you and we'll walk down there and see you as long as they'll let me that close. I don't know. They might not. They might.
I think you'll be okay. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not quite like that. So
do I need to call Frank on this?
I don't think so. I don't think you want to bother him on it. I think we can. Absolutely.
Coach, I trying to get down field. No. Okay. Thanks.
But before I forget, when you see JR tomorrow, let him know that last night I was doing a high school game, which was a blowout, and I went reminiscing about the Citadel 08-09 team because one of JR's teammates on that team was an assistant on First Baptist, the center, Demetrius Nelson. I went deep into I got time to fill talking about.
I will ask him if his ears were burning last night because he came out. He brought his son out to the coaches show last night and hung out with us for a while until Junior decided I'm melting down if you don't get me out of here. And Dad saw the alarm bells going off and they ducked out before the show was over with. But yeah, I will make sure I tell JR about that today. I'm gonna swing by practice a little later. I will make sure he knows he was getting some hype on the air last night.
Wonderful. Let Casey know if he's willing to dish out a coin or two for my kids. We'll get him a hot dog.
There you go. That's all I need. More hot dogs for Casey. Thanks so much,
Derek. Thank you for it's just a tremendous 2 hours to listen to you call Gamecock Hoops. I really love it, and can't wait to listen to it tomorrow. And I hope right around 3:00 you're putting Spurs on this one.
That would be good. That would be very good. All right, fellas. Appreciate it.
See you, man. There you go. Derek Scott, voice of Gamecock Hoops. And soon, again, baseball, as they're set to crank up. 2 weeks. Holy crap. 2 weeks from today is college baseball season. It's got the goosebumps again.
Or it already started. The D2s started yesterday. Defending national champ Wingate with double figures on the board are 1-0.
Oh.
Yeah. D2 baseball underway.
JUCO's already started too. I remember those days well. God. We still have another hour. All right. At least we have JC to spend some of it with. He's going to lead off hour 2, polling double duty this week. If you haven't heard, it's kind of messy on the plains. Plus, we get an update on the Gamecock search. Hoping to get somebody in the former shoes of tight ends coach Eric Kimry. I spoke with Eric as well. Tell you what he had to say on the other side of this break. Right here in our backyard is Motley Rice LLC, a law firm that hasn't lost its Carolina roots. The Motley Rice team fights every day for South Carolinians who were injured while traveling by plane or bus, harmed by medical drugs and devices, or burdened by dangerous auto recalls, including Takata airbags. Motley Rice is headquartered in Mount Pleasant at 28 Bridgeside Boulevard. We are honored to have Motley Rice as a sponsor for the JB and Goldwater Show and the Big Gamecock Preview Show.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risk their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
People don't like to get stuck in traffic, stuck in the mud, stuck at work, and 2 others you probably don't think much about. Stuck with a big medical bill or stuck with a healthcare program that doesn't fit who you are. Experience true medical freedom with Share Healthcare. More affordable, more options, user-friendly, and biblically sound. You can join right now. Explore a new way to show you care with Share Healthcare. Join us today at sharehealthcare.com. sharehealthcare.com.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Lowcountry. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit StonoFerryGolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. StonoFerryGolf.com.
Family vacations, a new car, a new boat, all cost money, but you don't necessarily have to make more to afford any of that if you can save cash that's flying out the window now. iHelp Consulting can help you finally get the kids to Disney World, upgrade the minivan, or drop that new boat in the water next summer. Let Daniel and iHelp Consulting consult with you. No fees, just savings. You pay them a percentage of those savings. Save on essential services, credit card fees, you name it. Let them find it. These folks are incredible. iHelpConsulting.com. How can I help you?
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Clamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the national anthem.
Live, loud, and online.
All right, final hour, the JB and Goldwater Show, very proudly presented by Motley Rice. If you could do me a quick favor there, Mr. Darren, and send JC one more link.
Did that link not go out this morning?
I don't know. But if you don't,
I'm doing it now.
Yeah, that would be much appreciated by our friend JC Shurburtt at the Big Spur. Share Healthcare chat lines are open, and hey, they're active today as well. We certainly appreciate all of you being in there, and anything that we see, we'll try to get it into our program, just like we're trying to get JC in now. Wow, this Auburn stuff is turning into quite a drama on the Plains with former players. Now the president has issued a statement. I mean, this is a train wreck. Auburn defensive lineman Colby Wooden, current defensive lineman Colby Wooden, on Instagram Live. Quote, all I'm going to say is Mr. Auburn, Bo Nix, left for a reason. End quote. The guy plays for Bryan Harsin, and he is on Instagram Live basically telling the world our quarterback left because he didn't like our head coach, who I play for.
There's no good end to this. I mean,
this is
so
bad.
Players, I understand the locker room united. I'm not there. I don't know whose side is right, but I can tell you there's no good end to this. There's too much back and forth right now. You're going to need to hire, like baseball, a federal mediator just to come in and find some middle ground, and that doesn't work for this.
Dude, you can't. I just don't. I don't see it, man. I mean, the atmosphere there. I mean, everything points to it just being a disaster. 20 players have left, if not more, on the way. I'm sure there probably will be after spring practice. You've had coaches leave. You've had coaches get fired. It's speculative for me to even say this because I don't know if there's any truth to it or not. But they hired this offensive coordinator, And then he darts out the door and basically comes up with a statement that says, well, I decided I want more family time and I want something different in my life and things like that. And we hear that from time to time. Matter of fact, we just heard it here at South Carolina with the departure of Eric Kimry and Connor Shaw. But with this just does not look good. Real quick before we add JC to the conversation as well, this is a statement from the president at Auburn. If I can find it again, here it is. Jay Gogue, quote, "I just want you to know we're involved in trying to separate fact from fiction. We'll keep you posted and make the appropriate decision at the right time." That is from the president of Auburn University, issued about 15-20 minutes ago. And so that's kind of where we are. We had to wake JC up. Generally he sleeps in on Fridays. No, just kidding. He's been up all morning. But we really could think of nobody better that we had a good relationship with, that also has a relationship amongst our peers in the SEC. And then JC Shurburtt. And also, of course, we will discuss a little bit of South Carolina, what updates we've got there. So JC, let's start. And thanks for coming back, by the way. This is double duty for JC this week on our program. He's been all over the place. And let's just kind of dive right into it. This is a train wreck. Brian spoke with Chris Lowe, basically said, I'm the man for the job. Also, though, JC went on to say, to summarize and to paraphrase, people need to let me do my job around here. But at a point many times over the years, that's not the way it works at Auburn. There's a lot of people that have a lot of hands in the pot, and they're going to do and say what they want. So now you got players who were calling him out. You've got the president who's issuing statements, JC. We're in the middle of a mess. I don't even know where to start with the conversation, but anything new on your end?
Well, Wednesday night, obviously, because I'm so South Carolina focused now, I don't, if something happens at Auburn, I'm not chasing it like I maybe used to and things like that. But I have some connections to that school, and in the course of talking about the open tight ends job at South Carolina, we got on the subject of Auburn, and it's a real deal in terms of Harsin being in trouble. I do want to give a shout out to Keith Allsep, who's on this show sometimes, a lot on the Gamecocks podcast. Keith's been calling this since December. He said, you wait till after signing day, this could happen. And, not that I didn't believe him, but I was kind of looking for Auburn to stabilize, and it never has. Every day you see some kid leaving for the portal. The offensive coordinator, Austin Davis, ups and leaves. And, Austin's a guy from the South, 32 years old. He's been in Seattle, and obviously coming back home was attractive to him, and he gets down there in that situation. It just doesn't work. Auburn is a unique place, and the Harsin hire was a left turn for that program, because when they were firing Malzahn, you heard Kevin Steele, and that's who the money people wanted. Kevin Steele.
Why? Just out of curiosity, why, JC? What was it about Kevin Steele that was?
I'm gonna just speculate here. Kevin Steele gets the job just like Gene Chizik and Gus Malzahn when they got the job, when they probably had resumes that weren't as good as some other candidates. It's control, and to a certain extent, you want to know why Derek Mason and Will Friend and Mike Bobo were on that staff, and the receivers coach he had to fire midway through. Those weren't Bryan Harsin guys. Those were guys that folks affiliated with Auburn were calling around and asking about before Harsin ever got the job. And so I think not that it's meddling, because how do you say it's meddling when you handed Gene Chizik a national championship, and Malzahn got to the national championship game, and then for 2 weeks in 2017 they were the best team in the country. So you can't say that doesn't work out. But there's a difference between hiring Kevin Steele, Gus Malzahn after 1 year at Arkansas State, Gene Chizik 5-19 at Iowa State. Difference between hiring those guys to coach Auburn and then hiring a guy like Bryan Harsin, who's done it his way, who's done it the Boise way, his whole career. And those two things are not alike, SEC traditional way and then Boise way. And Harsin's statement to Chris Lowe is right. You got to let the head coach be the head coach, but then there's all this other stuff that's been blowing up around him. And, fact from fiction, there's a lot of stuff out there about his personal life too that I'm not comfortable even discussing.
We're not either.
It's
you got to be able to prove stuff like that, man.
I'm
not gonna live in that rumor world.
Young lady involved too. What do people want to think about her? If this isn't true. It's bad. That's crap. If you're a loser and you're out and this isn't true and you're making it up, you're a loser in life, in my opinion.
Yep.
And somebody needs to take a 2x4 and smack you across the face, man or woman. You need to be smacked across the face. If you're a woman, by another woman, obviously, because men should never hit women. But anyway, that you're a complete loser if you're out there making things up about him having sex with whoever. Okay, so that aside, you still have to look at the fact that Derek Mason walked out the door and went to Oklahoma State. Good defense this year. You still have to look at it. They fired Mike Bobo initially. Factually, I know for a fact that Mike Bobo wasn't calling his offense this year. It was Harsin's offense. People want to know why Auburn threw it deep on 4th and 1 at Williams-Brice. That wasn't Mike Bobo's call. And we know that because when you have a back like Tank Bigsby, Mike Bobo in the past has ridden him. So you sort of look at it and it's like, man, then they lost 5 straight games. Now, would this be happening had they not lost 5 straight games, even with the turnover? I don't think so. Would this be happening if he signed a top 5 class? I don't think so. But he didn't. And so Auburn is a school that they're not going to wait around. They waited around on Malzahn, and that was the most shocking thing I think I've ever seen. He just kept surviving. He was fired before they beat Georgia and Bama in 2017, and then a $40 million contract, and then the results end up being the same. So so when I look at it, I'm not surprised we were at this point, and the word fit kind of comes up. Is Bryan Harsin a fit at Auburn? I never thought he was, but I didn't think Les Miles and Nick Saban were fits at LSU either. And they won national championships. So it's not always about having a quote unquote SEC guy, but certainly, if he gets fired, Kevin Steele took the Maryland D coordinator job. Then he left and took the Miami D coordinator job. Could you see another turnaround with him? I also know that I asked about Will Muschamp the other day, and there was no denial. I know he's very well thought of down there. That would be that'd be something else, Who do you hire at this stage to go coach Auburn? And I do think even beyond Steele or Muschamp or somebody like that, you could go find a guy. Bill Clark's right up the road at UAB. Great coach. Auburn will be able to attract it if their boosters will want to do it. And as we've seen, sometimes their selections don't really follow the rest of us, as far as who's a good hire and who's not. But I just, if Harsin survives, then that probably will mean some of the crap that's out there about him is not true. But if he survives, you're still putting a guy on a very short leash next year where Auburn is not, they've got a lot of issues football wise they have to solve too. So the chances of them having a great year next year, even with 5 home games to start the season, it's a little bit iffy. And if you're going to fire him, then you may as well fire him now. But we'll see what happens.
What type of? You mentioned that. I know this might sound crazy to some, but I would probably throw Hugh Freeze's name in there as well. By the way, you said 5 straight home games. Just for those wondering. Mercer, San Jose State, Penn State, Missouri, and LSU. Those are the 5 programs that will be coming to the Plains before they finally get on the road, and they'll head to Georgia on October the 8th. I'm sure Mike Bobo and Will Muschamp and all those guys will be excited to see them. what you say all that, JC. I mean, what type of coach? What type of person fits in on the Plains? I mean, so a crazy stat that I saw this morning. I don't know if you knew this or not, JC. This is wild. Auburn's had 27 coaches in their history. 10 of them have been fired after 1 year. 10.
Yeah,
I mean, that is outrageous.
It's
That's
Auburn,
a third
man.
of your coaches. So, what type of guy is a fit? Auburn. What do you have to be?
I look at Auburn and I think, you ever mentioned Bill Clark? That guy, Alabama guy, state of Alabama guy, knows Auburn, good coach, heck of a ball coach, that kind of thing. A guy like that, I think that there's always been kind of some intrigue with Lane Kiffin there because of the Saban thing, but they want to beat Alabama. I mean,
that's right.
What's crazy about it is Malzahn beat Alabama as well as anybody, when he was there, especially at home. And so, is it the Ed Orgeron route where you do hire Kevin Steele and you give him unlimited resources to hire staff and you get the NIL thing going? And do you take it? Is it Muschamp Part 3? Does Will Muschamp's ship come in and things go swimmingly there?
And then he brings Bobo back to Auburn.
Bobo back to. Wow, that's as the worm turns.
All right.
Do you is it a young up and comer from the area? Is it Neil Brown from West Virginia? Do you hand him the keys? And see, I think that the boosters there, I don't want to say they want to hire somebody that they can control, because that's kind of an insult to Malzahn and to Gene Chizik, but they want some influence. And I get the feeling they look at it more from that standpoint than who's actually good. I think that with the Harsin hire, it ended up being like, okay, we're going to make a huge deal out of you guys overruling the AD and the people on the search committee within the university if you don't let us have our way this time, because you keep firing people, But I think, you have a dumpster fire situation that takes place. The money people are going to want, right? It's going to be like Philip Fulmer taking back over as the AD at Tennessee. I mean, during when all that happened with the Pruitt search. And so, what kind of coach works at Auburn? Well, you got to find the next Gus Malzahn and Gene Chizik, which means you got to find a guy that's going to let the boosters have their say, but can go and win. And then you better keep winning, because look, man, Tommy Tuberville in 2004, Tubbs was 14-0, and then they had a good year in 2005, and then they were not ranked number 1 in 2006, and then 2007 comes along, or in 2007 and 2008. 2008 comes along, and he has one losing record, and he's fired. Chizik wins the national championship 2 years later. He has a terrible team because he made some terrible coaching hires. He's fired. Yeah. It took Malzahn a while to get fired, but he did after playing for a national championship in 2013. So I think what you want to do is you want to find that guy that can put it together, but that who can sustain it and maintain that patience, which does not exist there. That can keep people at bay. But I'll also say this: I mean, no matter who they hire, with the way the roster has gone right now, they're not inheriting what Chizik did or Malzahn did. Even with, Malzahn inherited a winless team in the SEC. That really had nothing to do with talent. So, we'll see kind of what happens with all that. But there's people out there, somebody mentioned on the chat here, Matt Rule.
Yeah.
But I don't think Matt Rule's the type of guy that's going to deal really well with Auburn's boosters. So.
Final one, and then let's get an update at South Carolina, where things are seemingly better, and then we'll move on. But you do what?
He said it's hard to be worse
right now. This is tough. So JC, you've got I just saw Stuart Mandel retweeted a current player, John Shanker, who says that listen carefully. Coach Harsin is my football coach. He's the leader I want to have in my corner. If you have a problem with his discipline, toughness, and conviction that he still instills in his players, then get your entitled, selfish, and soft tail away from this program. You've had other guys. You just had one dude a little bit ago on Instagram Live Yeah, there's a reason that Bo Nix left. And this guy's a defensive lineman currently for Bryan Harsin. So, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go as far as to say that it's a divided locker room because I don't know. I have no idea. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. I don't know. People that say stuff like that are stupid unless they've been in the locker room and they literally see this side and this side fighting each other. But it does look like there are multiple dissenting opinions of the head coach publicly, which obviously we know how that can turn out. It can lead to a PR nightmare that sometimes it's just best to separate amicably and move on. Doesn't appear, based on Bryan Harsin's comments to Chris Lowe, that's something he's interested in doing. But certainly some of the power brokers at Auburn might find a way to make that happen. If they do, and it's without cause, that'll be $40 million they've paid in buyouts in about 375 days. So have fun with that. So how do you, if they do move forward, what happens? I mean, what does this look like?
I don't know. I mean, it may get worse before it gets better. And, like I said, what all right, so you're out. There's obviously a hot seat kind of thing, right? Going on. And I don't care. Shinker's a hell of a tight end, but that guy's probably not, I don't want to say not in the majority, but I don't think that all the players are on the same page. Okay. How are you going to get it back together between now and start of the season with those 5 home games? That's the question, because if there is a question now and there are people upset, then there's not going to be a long leash once the season starts. And roster wise and all that, is Auburn going to be able to win? And, is a 3-2 start in those 5 games with losses to LSU and Penn State, is that going to be good enough? I can't say. God forbid they lose to Missouri too. On the Plains. I mean, so sometimes I think you got to kind of look and see. Like okay, so the pseudo meltdown at South Carolina Wednesday about Kimry and Shaw leaving, that's nothing, because that's a situation where, Spencer Rattler didn't walk out the door. Marshawn Lloyd didn't walk out the door. Jordan Strawn didn't decide to go in the supplemental draft. Players aren't leaving. I mean, it's one full-time coach and off the field guy. And yes, they were Gamecock quarterbacks or whatever, but that's not something to where you go, Shane Beamer's never going to be able to overcome this. That's dumb. But with Harsin, you just kind of have to wonder, man, how are you going to, because you solve this by winning. You solve this by being right. You solve this by building that championship program. But you're also at a place where you had to know when you took the job. You had to. Every coach in the country knows this, unless you're just naive, that Auburn is notorious for having no patience. None. Not one bad year and you're out there. And that, I respect them for that. Really. I kind of, because they don't care. They're just win. I mean, they're in a situation where you got the greatest program in the country in your own state. You got another great program right next door. You got to fight. And if it doesn't look like it's going to be right, you got to blow it up and fix it. And so that's my thing. I just don't see a way out. Now, if some of the personal stuff ends up not being true and, you don't have calls to fire him otherwise, are you going to pay the buyout? There's all those questions that have to be answered. But I said prior to now, don't sleep on Harsin. He's a heck of a football coach. He's got his guys in there. They may turn it around and be surprisingly good. Now, at this point, with all this other mess, and you still have players coming out and say, I just don't think it's tenable. And I look for Auburn to probably make a move.
Let me ask you this. It's along the lines of what I was saying before, and that, I don't know who's right and who's wrong in everything that we're hearing, but there's so much on both sides that it's hard for me to see a middle ground being found. So if there's not that ground, is it better to make the move now or give them a chance and make that move in season after season?
Right now.
I'd make it right now, because you're still, it's February 4th. You got 2 weeks to spring practice. There's going to be a bunch of guys hit the portal after spring ball that you can the new coach can backfill his roster. I mean, it's better. Now you do it in May or June. That's rough. That's tough. That's unprecedented.
JC, let me, not to interrupt you. Maybe it just hit me. I don't know. Maybe I've been asleep for the last 4 hours. If Bryan Harsin had done nothing wrong, like, hey, he's done nothing wrong, we want him to be our coach. Don't you think by now the university would have stepped out and said, Bryan Harsin's our football coach, and everybody needs to shut the hell up and move on about their lives? They have done nothing like that. Like, anything that that's coming out now, because I've never seen anything like this on social media with players, literally going back and forth basically with each other on social media. Pick up, you got his number, right? Pick up the phone and call him. You probably live in the same apartment building.
Yeah.
But I mean, they have issued 0 statements in defense of Bryan Harsin. None, not a one to this point. And it is impossible for me, guys, to think that they're investigating something that they didn't already know about. I mean, they can't be investigating the treatment of players. They were around the guy all year. We would have heard by now, unless they haven't issued a statement because he did break a real rule, or they're like literally turning every page in their attorney's office to try to fire him with cause. But if it wasn't for any of those reasons, I don't understand why they haven't stepped out and said, this is our coach and we're moving forward with Bryan Harsin. Does that make sense? Do y'all kind of get where I'm going?
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you there. And as they always say, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's a lot of smoke, and it's not just some of the more recent salacious accusations. There's been some other stuff there too. And I'll just with, like, there's the whole vaccine thing with Derek Mason, where Mason had to issue a independent statement about it. I mean, and he's out the door, and they don't even, Mason's interviewing at Oklahoma State. He hadn't gotten it yet. And Harsin tells him to go pound sand and leave. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. Now, what you have to think about is contractually and legally, is it for cause or not? And I'll have to disagree with Frank here on the chat line that Bryan Harsin is the story in today and has nothing to do with football. I think it does. Because if this guy was, what was he, 6-7? If he was 10-3, do you think we'd be having this conversation? No.
I agree. I think
I think it does. Now has it gone to beyond football right now? Yes, but the root of it is they lost 5 straight games, and that's just a fact, especially when you're talking about Auburn.
Absolutely. I hear what Frank's saying. I don't disagree at all with the premise of his comment there. But to your point,
the roots are in football.
If they would have gone 10-2 this year, 10-3, 11-2, this crap would have been squashed. They would have found a way to quiet this in a hurry.
And the players wouldn't be going back and forth here, because if they're winning, then there's no dissension in the locker room.
Yeah, they would have. It just feels like somebody's in a corner. Somebody's going, all right, how do we save $18 million? Get rid of them, but you got to save us $18 million, or you got to cut that number down, and then we're going to go hire, Hugh Freeze and Will Muschamp together.
I just want to say this: if you're in the Pacific Northwest and you're a successful head coach, and this does not work out, don't take a job at one of the Alabama schools, because Mike Price took that job, you remember? And boy, he's gone, and quickly. He didn't even coach a game, and then Boyle Harsin comes down and takes over. Just don't take it. I mean, if you're a successful coach in the Pacific Northwest, you try to get that Washington gig or that Colorado gig, and or UCLA or Arizona State or something. Don't go to Alabama. Don't.
You can go to Mississippi though. You can go to Mississippi.
I think Leach and then Lane Kiffin used to be a coach of the Pac-12.
Yeah, he's fine.
So Mississippi's fine. Anywhere else is fine. But man, those Alabama jobs, they chew those Northwestern boys up and spit them out.
That's a tough nut to crack down there, man. All right, real quick. Do want to let you, I know you got to go. So, and we probably kept you longer than I told you 20 minutes, 12. We're 7 over that. So, but Eric Kimry gone, Connor Shaw gone. They're looking to fill those roles. I will say that I did speak with Eric this morning, and I just wanted to pass along to our audience. I know that there are still some skeptical out there about no matter what everybody says about why this happened and things of that nature. But I will just read this for Eric, not that he hadn't already said it. He said, this is an incredible opportunity, and Baylor is a magical place. This is 100% what I want, and this is 100% what is best for my family. Let's catch up soon. Hope you're well. So that's from Eric Kim this morning. And from what I understand, this is something that's been JC kind of in the works for a while for his life and his future and what he wants to do personally and how he wants to wake up and go to sleep every day. So certainly I've known Eric for a while. He's a great human being. And I just know a lot of people share the same thing. Wish him all the best in the world. With all that being said, JC, thebigspur.com is the place for the updates. What type of updates can you pass along real quick as the search is on?
Yeah, replacement. A lot of good names out there. Tim Brewster obviously is one the fans really are digging. Right now when you start talking about it, there's also some Bobby Bentley talk. Now I haven't talked with Coach or on his end, but I've heard some buzz about that around, and he's a coordinator now down at South Florida, so we'll see. I kind of look at this, look at the list of guys, and I want to make sure I get his name right because I don't know much about him other than what I've heard. Jody Wright is a guy that was director of player personnel at Bama. He's coached on the field at Jacksonville State, UAB. Was most recently with Joe Judge with the Giants, and he's kind of part of that Freddie Kitchens, Joe Judge coaching tree that Shane Beamer was a part of at Mississippi State under Sylvester Croom. And my understanding is Jody has some interest in the job and is a candidate, but also has some other stuff he's looking at. Same with Brewster. Brewster's got some other opportunities as well. Buster Faulkner is a name that I heard. He's an offensive analyst at Georgia. You can look him up. And then, guys like Scotty Spurrier, who's an analyst at Arizona, I think would like to get a shot at it. I did report today that with Josh Stepp, who's the OC at Georgia State, Justin's brother, and with Pat DeMarco specifically, while those are great candidates, and obviously you could do a whole lot worse than either one of those guys, I don't expect those guys to be the ultimate choice. Like, I'm not eliminating anybody completely, but if you're kind of looking to get an idea of it, and that's probably how I'll handle covering this. I'll just rule people out as we go on. And then you never know. There's probably 2 or 3 people out there that we haven't even heard of if we've followed Shane Beamer's hiring. But right now, I know a lot of people want Tim Brewster to get the job, and I can get behind any of it, and definitely. I think that just theoretically, if it was him, he brings a lot of recruiting chops in the state of North Carolina. That's something that South Carolina needs as a program. And he also coached Antonio Gates and Kyle Pitts. So, I mean, for a tight ends coach, you can't go. And Jalen Wiedermeyer from Texas A&M. So there's 3 guys love and respect. So this guy's got a big resume. And I'll tell you this right now, too. I'll add one more thing about Brewster. Had he not coached at Mississippi State and Minnesota and North Carolina, had he just been at like Texas and Texas A&M and Florida State, I'd be a little hesitant about it. But because we know the guys that are just at Blue Bloods struggle here. But Tim he's not been just at Blue Bloods. I mean, he walked in the door at North Carolina twice where they're sitting on like 2 wins and then 3 this past time. He walks in this past time, the first thing he does is go with Mac and flip Sam Howell from Florida State. So that's a recent example of a guy coming into a program making an instant impact. But hey, may not be him. Like I said, you guys have heard me talk about Bobby Bentley for forever. And if you look at the guys he recruited that are on the roster right now, it's impressive. And then, like I said, I don't know Jody Wright as well, but I know people that do know him and think highly of him too. So, I have a feeling that, if indeed, I'm 98% sure they're going to hire a tight ends coach and not rearrange the staff or anything. Shane Beamer's got an opportunity to upgrade this time.
we'll keep our eyes peeled. I had similar information last night about Tim Brewster. So
sure, I mean, he's
see what it looks like.
And I'll say one more thing about Auburn. They need to, in Alabama, and not hiring people from where or whatever. They need to hire a guy from that was born in Arkansas, because here are the guys that were born in Arkansas besides Johnny Cash, who nobody thinks about. Johnny Cash born in Arkansas. Tuberville, born in Arkansas. Bear Bryant, born in Arkansas. Gus Malzahn, born in Texas, but spent his whole career in Arkansas. So Bryan Harsin's 1 year at Arkansas State's probably not Arkansas-y enough to coach on the Plains, right?
We'll get into the research of Arkansas.
There's a new word, Arkansas.
Arkansas-y.
Bill
Arkansas-y. Arkansas-y.
Don't forget who also is from Arkansas.
Arkansas-y is what it would be.
Arkansas-y, baby.
Make you a T-shirt. Arkansas-y.
Yeah, I actually got Nat an old school Arkansas sweatshirt with the Razorback on it for Christmas. She likes with the mascot and all that. So I think we're going to Vegas that weekend. Carolina plays in Arkansas, but if we don't, I may take a drive down or a trip down to Fayetteville. I was there in 2009. That's a pretty good place. You have the Catfish Hole, which is delicious. So.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of. I'm looking forward to cranking back up this fall of my SEC road trips. I think we're leaning towards going back to Lexington, Kentucky. So
I will probably see you there.
But we're thinking also about going to Arkansas, a place we've never been. So if we do that, we'll let you know. One way or another.
I think that Kentucky game will be during Keeneland too, and it is. If I'm in Chicago, it's probably the shortest road. Kentucky and Missouri are the two shortest road trips from here, because Kentucky, you just go straight down through Indiana, and
such a great trip.
So
it's a great trip.
You may see me. We may have to hook it, especially if it's Keeneland, dude, because I've never done the horse racing and game thing.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. Anyway, we got off track. So I'm sorry.
We haven't either, but we have done the Bourbon Trail, a lot of the Bourbon Trail, and the Bourbon Trail is fantastic.
My boy Mike Morgan's wife is from Lexington, and I see the pictures on his Instagram all the time about the Bourbon Trail.
Does anybody live a better life than Mike Morgan? Yeah,
no.
Where are you at tonight? I'm at Rupp. Where are you tomorrow? I'm at let's see, I've got Kansas,
Woodford Reserve, and then somewhere else.
Then I'm gonna come back to Woodford. Then I'm gonna go to Miami, lay on South Beach for 6 days. Then he goes to the Bahamas. Then he's in Atlanta. And then he's calling an NFL game. And dude lives the dream.
Man, yeah, I know. And a good friend of mine. And by the way, we do have a new JC and Morgan podcast out this week, so be sure to check that one out.
JC, we kept you long enough. We know you got stuff to do today. We will keep our eyes peeled just to make the fans happy here. Let's just go ahead and create a big push for DJ Swearinger to fill Connor Shaw's role, and then everybody will be happy moving forward. So write you a column on that, and we'll talk to you next week.
Everybody needs more swag, dude. I'd love it. All right, guys. See you later. Talk to you next week. Have a great weekend.
Yes, sir. You too. There you go. JC Shurburtt pulling double duty this week here on our program. All right, it's 1:40 Friday afternoon. Thank God. We're going to hit a timeout. When we return, we still got a couple of things to dip into, including some hoops and some football and much more. Hang tight. JB and Goldwater Show. We'll be right back. Hopefully, you won't ever need legal help for a catastrophic injury or health issues from a medical drug or device. But if you or a loved one suffers injury or loss, Motley Rice LLC is a nationally recognized law firm that is right here in Mount Pleasant at 28 Ridgeside Boulevard. Thank you, Motley Rice, for sponsoring the JB and Goldwater Show and the Big Gamecock Preview Show. Visit motleyrice.com for more. motleyrice.com.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road. You know what happens when you sell record numbers of new vehicles? That's right. We take in record numbers of local trades. Despite what the news is saying, quality pre-owned vehicles really aren't that hard to find. You just need to know where to look. Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate and on the web at stokesvw.com. We've got over 1,200 pre-owned cars, trucks, SUVs, and all at a fraction of the price when new. Every vehicle has been inspected and reconditioned, many with the balance of factory warranty. Best of all, at Stokes Volkswagen, you don't need the perfect credit to get approved for a quality pre-owned vehicle. And we'll take any trade in any condition, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Don't forget, we'll buy your car even if you don't buy a car from us. You're going to love our pre-owned selection, I guarantee it. So come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate or StokesVW.com.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Negative trade equity finance to new loan, subject to lender approval.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
Family vacations, a new car, a new boat, all cost money, but you don't necessarily have to make more to afford any of that if you can save cash that's flying out the window now. iHelp Consulting can help you finally get the kids to Disney World, upgrade the minivan, or drop that new boat in the water next summer. Let Daniel and iHelp Consulting consult with you. No fees, just savings. You pay them a percentage of those savings. Save on essential services, credit card fees, you name it. Let them find it. These folks are incredible. iHelpConsulting.com. How can I help you?
You hear me talk about Dog and Duck all the time, and there's no other place I'm going to watch my college and NFL than the Dog and Duck. They have 3 locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clements Ferry Road. They have specials all football season long, like $12 pitchers of their own D2 brew, $5 pints of Sierra Nevada, weekly pick'em sheets with prizes, and the best wings in town, bar none. For all your football, college, and NFL, the Dog and Duck, Clements Ferry Road, Bell Hall, and Park West.
Hey, South Carolina, what's going on? This is Patrick Davis, and you are listening to my friends JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Papa Top again.
Freak. TGIF.
Finally, I'm free again. I got my motor running for a wild weekend.
Freak out, yo.
Friday, gotta get down on Friday. Everybody's looking forward to the weekend, Friday.
Yeah. What she said. 145, final 15 minutes of the week here on the JB and Goldwater Show. Looks like Darren, Major League Baseball and the Players Association going to draw this out a little bit longer. Have you seen the latest statement?
I saw one before the show that it looks like spring training's probably getting pushed back. I know yesterday they were trying to get mediation. I'm not sure if that's going to happen or not. I know the players need to agree to that if they get some federal mediation. But look, we're both diehard baseball fans here. So the sooner these two sides figure everything out, the sooner we are back at the drawing table to get these negotiations going, moving forward. Because at the moment they are completely and totally just stalled. So the sooner we can get there, the better. But no, I have not seen the latest update other than probably not on time for spring training, and maybe we need federal mediation.
Yeah, from the Players Association, 2 months after implementing their lockout and just 2 days after committing to players that a counter proposal would be made, the owners refused to make a counter and instead requested mediation after consultation with our executive board. And taking into account a variety of factors, we have declined this request. The clearest path to a fair and timely agreement is to get back to the table. Players stand ready to negotiate. So basically what the players are saying is that Major League Baseball wants a mediator to basically tell them, no, it's going to go our way. And Major League Baseball's Players Association is saying, yeah, no.
If they can get closer, the gap's wide enough. If they can get closer, then mediation makes sense. Then we can hash out some of the issues and figure that out. If the gap is still so wide, then I didn't understand the mediation anyway. I mean, because at that point you're just basically siding with one over the other. So
yeah.
you got to cross some bridges. You got to get closer to the drawing table. It's like any contract negotiation. I mean, if you get super lowballed. Well, I'm not even going to the table with you to negotiate because you're not at a starting point to negotiate. They got to get to that starting point, and they got to do it sooner than later because before you know it, we're going to be on March Madness. We're going to have the Masters, and we're going to have
Bingo.
baseball season that's supposed to start. It's supposed to start. So they got to get on this soon.
Major League Baseball, in my opinion, fails every year in March to promote themselves. If I was Major League Baseball with March Madness ongoing, I would create an enormous marketing campaign. I'd throw all the cash at it. They have it. So I would throw, hundreds of millions of dollars, if that's what it took, to buy as many spots as they possibly can in March Madness and try to capitalize on the enthusiasm of something that everybody loves to watch. There isn't a soul on earth that says, I can't stand watching March Madness. We're all in a good mindset. The weather is changing in a lot of the country at that point in time. That sounds kind of weird, right? But Darren and I have been in marketing for a long time. You take advantage of the way people think different times of the year. That's the way that marketing works. You tap into certain thought processes and feelings and stuff like that, especially when you get into major media marketing. And Major League Baseball fails every year. And this year is going to be no different from that standpoint, but they're also not even going to be knocking on the door potentially of playing a season. I mean, come on, man. I mean, look, baseball is it's such a beautiful game, and Major League Baseball has done as much as they can for a long time to screw it up. They just can never get in front of it. They never can. Their TV contracts are awful. They do literally nothing to promote themselves. And, they think that they're living off of being America's pastime, which in my mind they are. But in most minds, they're not anymore. They are. Football is now America's pastime, not baseball. So, this is just going to be another roadblock that they've thrown up for no reason at all. And I get it. I saw Whit Merrifield has already been outspoken today from the player's standpoint. I think he's the player rep for Kansas City. And basically saying, hey, look, the part of negotiating is where you actually negotiate. And according to Whit Merrifield, Major League Baseball isn't negotiating. They want a mediator to come in and just basically solve this thing. And players are having none of it. And they have every right to do that. So they'll not come to the table.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? I mean, you need to have some commonality to even get to a negotiating table. And right now we're not there. This feels bad, right? I mean, it's uncomfortable. It's on the table that the season does not start on time. I'm not giving up hope of the season not starting on time. These things generally come down to the very last minute. Make it one side making the other, game of chicken a little bit. But it does feel like they're pretty far apart. And it does feel like there are bridges to be crossed here to get to that point. I'll be shocked if spring training starts on time. But they might be able to wiggle their way into the season starting at least close to on time.
Yeah. I mean, baseball is I don't see spring training starting on time and play. Generally by now, even pitchers and catchers are already kind of starting to slide down to Florida or Arizona.
Get ready. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, they're kind of there. And that's not going to be the case, but it's very frustrating as a fan of baseball. I've had numerous friends play in the big leagues, still know a handful of guys in the big leagues, all great guys. But the leaders of the sport we've watched attendance decline for years. And we just went through this incredible postseason. And, aside from the fact that my Braves won it, which was great for our neck of the woods, it was a great postseason. It was a great postseason. Major League Baseball every year, Darren, does do a really good job when they promote the postseason. They're all over the place for the most part. I mean, I'd like to see them on some more, get some things a little bit smoothed out. But overall, they do let's put it this way. They're tenfold at what they do to get people interested in the postseason than what they do in the regular season. And you can't grow the sport to grow the regular season.
Right. It's easier. I think it's natural. Postseason's for everything, college, pro, regardless of sport. It's easier to build up interest there because now Now it's win or go home. And then if your games can live up to what they can be, then it just furthers those marketing efforts. I love your idea for March Madness to throw a lot of cash to promoting the sport, then to have the carryover of a younger crowd too. That's what you're going after, is a younger crowd. And there's a lot of a younger crowd that's heavily invested in March Madness. Speaking of investing, as you were going into that conversation, part of my head's spinning and thinking, does Vegas get involved in this? Because once college basketball ends, there are other things that are going on out there, but the primary sport, I mean, you still have the NBA trickling out there. You get the NHL. You need baseball. And I would bet Vegas, well, baseball probably isn't one of the heavily wagered things. It's a primary thing. I would bet Vegas has a hand in this some way, somehow, trying to get them to the table. They don't want months missed with baseball.
No, they don't. And they don't need that. And baseball doesn't need to go and do what I think NASCAR has done. I mean, NASCAR, they got this race coming up, Saturday, right? Sunday.
In LA, right?
In LA. Yeah, at the Coliseum. NASCAR to me has gotten very gimmicky. When I was a kid, I loved watching NASCAR, especially before my dad passed away. But, the Earnhardts and the Ernie Irvins and those guys, I mean, that was fun. And NASCAR, I get it. They've tried to brand and they've tried to, rebrand and expand their boundaries, so to speak, find new audience members. It was very Southern for a long time. Very, NASCAR had what we all saw it to be, right? And they've kind of tried to get away from some of the things that they felt like held the sport back for a while, which I don't have a problem with that. But they got kind of gimmicky with certain things, like this race this week. That's just stupid. And there's just, I don't know. I'd love to see if they've actually grown the sport or not. I feel like they've tried to just reinvent it, which you don't have to. In baseball, to me, is similar. There's nothing wrong with baseball. Baseball, it just needs to be promoted right. Like you've got great players in the game of baseball who in 10 years, 5 years, Darren, we're going to look up and we're going to go, oh my gosh, that guy's knocking on the door of that record. Why didn't anybody tell me for the last decade? Like, these are the players now that we're going to be talking about these records in 10 years, 5 years, 10 years. And there's going to be a bunch of people that don't even know who they are. Some of the greatest records in sports. So I think they do a really poor job of telling the story of the game of baseball. And you've said this before. It's so marketable. Juan Soto. That's one of a lot of them, right? Trout. A lot of them. There's tons of young guys in the game right now. And Trout's not even young anymore. But think about this. Not to interrupt you, but think about this. Jimmy Garoppolo, a barely average quarterback in the NFL, was better marketed this year than the best player in the game in Mike Trout in Major League Baseball.
It's apples and oranges, because the NFL is this, I don't even know how to put it. The NFL is so much bigger than everything else. And you've got one of the all-time franchises, and you've got that franchise that's making a push, and you've got the question whether or not he's even going to still be there. So I think that's a bit of apples and oranges, but baseball does need to do a better job in promoting itself. They need to adjust with the times, because there are some issues with baseball, and a lot of it is public perception, but you need to start attacking some of that. You can try to shorten some of the game somehow, some way. I mean, I've said it many times. I mean, I'm cool with the way the game is. I love the game itself, but I'm also okay accepting some change moving forward. It all goes hand in hand with marketing and getting it out there and pushing your players to the forefront. What this does, this stall out right here, is you do lose the momentum of last year. It was a strong year for baseball last year. It was growing, and then you had the heightened postseason with it, and then this kills its momentum there a little bit. And the last thing baseball needs right now is to have that momentum killed. That said, I don't think it really will affect fan interest, because it's not as though they're not going to lose many fans because of this, because the fans that are there right now like the game anyway, and they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs like we are, saying, let's go, guys, like, let's go. The ones who aren't there, you're not building. That's what I was going to say. Losing your chance to grow
Right.
Like, you're not going to
Bingo.
slink back, but you're losing your chance to grow. And the chance is there, but you're losing the chance.
That's where I was going. You're right. It's not about losing fans. You know, I mean, have some fans over the years probably shifted into more of a casual baseball fan? Sure. I know I have plenty of friends like that who were players. So they're like, I don't really watch it much until, there's nothing else to watch or something, but I'll watch it in the playoffs or whatever. That's not everybody though. But they're not growing. That's the problem. Is they're not. I don't care what stats they throw out there. Like we've been talking today. Tomorrow at 1:00. What do we keep talking about? Tennessee is playing South Carolina on CBS tomorrow at 1:00.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that relevant to this conversation? Well, technically it's not, but kind of it. Like broadcast TV still matters. I mean, I get it. Like we need to be, make sure that we're solid digitally and getting this younger fan base and this, that, and the other. But why do we get excited when somebody gets a 3:30 kick on CBS in the fall or a 1:00 tip on CBS in the spring, or, Fox picks up, a Friday night primetime 8:00 game? That's not Fox Digital. It's not CBS Sports Plus, 2.0 that you have to go to your app. There is still something that is strong about saying we are on big time network TV at this time. Baseball didn't have that. They don't have it. They have a little bit of it at Fox here and there. And outside of that, ESPN Sunday nights. That's it.
Right. No, because they're not in bed with a lot of the networks really other than Fox. They're spreading out. I agree with what baseball's doing. I don't think they belong on, they could work their way into some of the ABCs. What they need to do to reach the younger audience is exactly what they're doing, expanding their platform, because everything is available. I don't think it's a bigger deal that a game's on CBS tomorrow because there's going to be a higher production value to it. There's going to be announcers that that are staples. But it's not much of a bigger deal anymore because everything is accessible. I mean, I can set my TVs up the same way, whether you're on CBS or ESPN Plus, and I can find it. I mean, ESPN Plus is a stretch there, but with ESPNs, with cable TV, with Fox Sports 1, it's good to get the network TV stuff, but it's not as big anymore.
I just think they should do both. Football does it. Basketball does it. Baseball, do it. Anyways, thanks to Derek and JC and Darren. Thanks to all of you. We hope you truly have a wonderful weekend. We'll be back at noon on Monday. We'll see what happens between now and then. Go Team USA. This has been the JB and Goldwater Show, presented by Motley Rice.
Yeah, the parking lot is muddy. Can't get to